This Monday.com ad was created by a team of people and AI agents. Reese, our content agent, wrote the copy based on our best practices, like mentioning Monday.com 3 times. That was the second. Johnny, our coordination agent, built the timeline and kept everyone aligned. Olivia, our human creative director, stayed in the loop. Because agents are great, but they don't always know when a joke lands. She had one note: tell listeners it only takes minutes to build an agent. So, minutes. Create your own AI agent today on Monday.com.
Hi, it's Sierra Miller. I can't wait for you to check out my new collection of shoes and accessories at Designer Shoe Warehouse. If you love shoes as much as I do, then trust me, I got you. From cute sneakerinas to the perfect flip-flops to stunning heels, these shoes are all style, no drama. It's a girl's girl summer, and DSW has just the shoes. Shop the Sierra Miller collection right now at your DSW store or dsw.com.
Today on Partners in True Crime.
If you don't have a body, you can't convict on murder. You can't convict for a murder charge strictly off of a confession. So the things you have to prove is that the person is deceased and that their death was caused by a crime.
Why it doesn't make any sense. Why would a mother of 2 leave all of her things, her car keys, her kids, her hearing aids, everything that she would possibly need, and then walk out in a blizzard?
He over and over would say, hard to find, can't prove. And I never would question, but now I'm like, well, yeah, now I get it.
Right.
I mean, he would say that to the police.
His recent girlfriend, who's deathly afraid of him, who he said that he tried to ask her to marry him while he was in jail.
Sure, so she can't testify against it.
Exactly.
Hear that, Jodi?
So we're back with Partners in True Crime. We're here with Allison Diker, and we also have a special guest who a lot of people on our podcast network are familiar with, Jodi Barth. And Jodi Barth is a former CSI and also commander detective from the Illinois State Police. And she was also a coroner. She has over 200 death investigations. Is that correct, Jodi?
Estimating, yes.
Estimating. So
I don't keep count, but I'd say at least.
At least. So we wanted to bring Jodi on because she's helped us with the Molly and Colt case, that people understand, and also with the Noah Presgrove case. And we thought we'd get her perspective on what's been happening in Allison's case with her mother and her father, and the confession and craziness that's going on that she's been experiencing over the last 2 weeks. So, Jodi, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I wanted to dive right in because we wanted to hear your perspective, because you've been involved in these things. We actually talked the other day and you said you had a very similar case in regards to some of the forensic evidence that they found and how that can work out. So first off, what do you think of this case in general? Because it's kind of really unique. It's a 40-plus year case. And, you have a key witness here right here who was 5 years old and who always in the back of her mind knew what had happened, but she really couldn't piece it together because who remembers stuff from 5 years old? And then, but she, after a long period of time, she dove in and she started investigating this case a lot like the same energy that Paula did and a lot of these victims' families that we've known. So what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think it's incredible what you did. I would love to know how he eventually confessed to it, because after 45 years of getting away with it, I am amazed that he came forward and confessed. I was thrilled to hear what really happened with your habeas corpus hearing. I'm very optimistic. Let me just put it that way. I think you guys had great representation. I think they went exactly for what they needed to go for. And, it's kind of a weird thing because most times habeas corpus comes up after conviction. The only time it's allowed before conviction is for pre-trial detentions, because they're claiming they're not looking at guilt or innocence. They're looking at whether or not their constitutional rights were violated by detaining them, unlawfully. So that's what it's all about. And in most states, including Pennsylvania, you cannot, if you don't have a body, you can't convict on murder. You can't convict for a murder charge strictly off of a confession. You have to have some corroborating evidence. And that's all that hearing was just to find the things you have to prove is that the person is deceased and that their death was caused by a crime. Those are the two things that the judge has to be convinced of. And I think you did that royally. I mean, not only with all of the things that you pieced together with what she left behind, including you and your family, your
brother.
Is it one brother?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking there was a sister in there too, but I think no, I was getting her confused. But in any event, leaving you guys behind, but all of her other stuff that she just wouldn't have left behind. And then the best part was the fibers, which of course, that's hard to argue. So I'm just thrilled. I think you're going to have a really good outcome. I'd be surprised if you don't. So
I hope you're right.
So did you want me to talk about the case? Because I did have a case with fibers.
Well, yeah. Talk about the case that you had that was similar that you talked.
Yeah, actually, it was my very, very first homicide case as a CSI. And it was a double homicide. And the girls, it was in the dead of winter, so cold, so much snow and ice. And they were actually frozen in the ice underneath a culvert running underneath a county road. And how we broke the case was with fibers from a blanket that he used to drag the bodies under the culvert. And we matched them back along with dog hairs. We matched back to his truck and his dogs. Now, you can't match either one of those individually, like you can a fingerprint or DNA. They're considered class evidence, but they still count as circumstantial evidence. So you're looking at the totality of evidence when you're using that kind of evidence, but it's still good.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was just kind of weird because that was my very first case. There's
a lot of similarities there. I mean, just on face value, you have the fibers from the blanket and you have the pink fibers from her mom's blanket that was in the cabin. And then you have an incredible snowy night, which was the same circumstances with Allison's mom when she went missing. It was a blizzard. So
why had a blizzard?
Why it doesn't make any sense. Why would a mother of two leave all of her things, her car keys, her kids, her hearing aids, everything that she would possibly need, and then walk out in a blizzard in the middle of the night?
And that's my question, Jodi. I mean, you were a badass back in the day and one of the only females in that group, right? For a lot of the things. We all know how that goes for all the three women on this call. But at the end of the day, when I'm looking at this case and I'm looking at, you have these children, you have a woman who is deaf and she leaves behind all of this nonsense, right? And you're going to say that she voluntarily left? I mean, if you came on that scene, what would you have thought immediately?
Well, of course I would question that for sure. The huge, I mean, in my mind, I'd be looking at all the things left behind that women just don't do that. They just don't leave their wallets and their purses.
And their children.
And well, of course, their children. That's the
thing. It's I don't understand how these investigators just took his word for it. Why do you think they would do that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Small town.
Maybe it was a combination of the night, the blizzard. I mean, there was so much there. You had the babysitters. It wasn't just, one person saying, oh, she wouldn't leave with, I mean, you had the babysitter that said, look, she wouldn't leave her kids. They're with me. You had
the uncles,
her father,
yeah, and her uncle,
who had met with her. Yeah. And the uncles, I mean, there was a lot of information. So, I mean, I can understand, I guess, why they didn't immediately jump on it, because he kind of covered his tracks pretty well, in that he just went about his life. He went to work, he showed up late, but he got to work, you know, he just carried on with his life. So he didn't really, at least as I was listening and reading through things, you know, it's not like he acted really guilty at first, but it just wouldn't have set well with me at all. Especially with regard to, I just wonder what would have happened had they looked in that car, the other car, his car, I guess, where you thought you saw the disturbed snow. I mean, that's an eye catcher. So maybe if they would have just done that, maybe it would have been different. But with all the snow coming down, and probably, I don't know how many police were in the area, but they probably had their hands full with the blizzard too, on top of everything else. I'm guessing. I don't know. Yeah. So not making excuses for him, for sure.
Yeah.
But,
no, yeah. I understand. And we're not here to disparage them either, but it is curious to me. And it's happened on so many cases that we've worked on. We worked on another one in South Carolina where it was very similar, where the mom and the daughter disappeared and the guy was like, oh, she just left with someone. And then the brothers were like, no, she wouldn't have left us. She wouldn't have gone with my sister and taken off and left us here. She wouldn't have done that. So it's just, when you have, you know, children saying this and you have family members saying this, I just think there has to be something that changes, that, you know, those statements are taken a little bit more seriously in the early hours of these kinds of cases, because once the time goes by, that's it.
Yeah. The only thing that was interesting that they said that I think the officer, I don't know if he said it in the courtroom or if he said it was in the report, that when they revealed that fiber from the blanket, the pink blanket that never left the side of the couch or behind the couch, that he said that he thought that he had enough information to bring him in then for questioning. And I think that's a hindsight 2020. Why didn't you do it then? And but they probably would have come up empty anyway, because they probably would have, like, you know, because of the fact that Bud was deaf, and who knows if they had like a interpreter available. In fact, they may have had to enlist Allison as the interpreter, because I don't know, you know, not that they would have, but like she was the only one kind of being the go-between between her father and the outside world. Right.
Which obviously that's just laced with all kinds of problems if they had to do that, you know, so I'm sure they probably would have found somebody else. But I would think that, I know, thinking back as a detective, that would be a hard thing for me, because that's not something you plan for, right or wrong. It's just not something you plan for as a police officer, that you're going to run into that kind of a problem where you need an interpreter for that. Yeah. Foreign languages, yes, we kind of plan for that, most of the time, but you just don't. So I'm sure that had something to do with it, but it's just kind of, crazy the way it went so far. I mean, to me, they had plenty to call him in for an interview. I mean, he maybe didn't have to come. He could have probably refused, because the only way they could force him to do that, obviously, is through arrest. And they may not have had enough to arrest him at that point. But I certainly would have asked him to come in.
So just to clarify, the officer at the hearing 2 weeks ago was, I believe, 2 days into the missing person case. He was assigned because the original person was going on vacation or something. So then he was assigned, and then he said, based on just the blanket, he felt like he had enough to bring him in, and he testified that he did bring him in. Problem was, whoever he got for an interpreter wasn't a good fit. And he said it was a complete failure. Like the communication did not go well, and it was a complete failure. Like nothing useful came from it, is what he said in his testimony.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense to me. And I apologize because as you said that, I do remember hearing that portion of the podcast.
He also said, though, right after that now the little nugget of information that I had never heard before, he said in court, and that was after, I don't know if it was before the interview or after the interview, but they did search his truck, the Bronco, and that pink blanket they found, which I had never heard before until that day. They found pink carpet fibers in the back of his Bronco, and there's no reason for that to be there. It's a couch blanket.
Right. So they did collect them at that time, I take it.
Yeah, I just didn't know that.
Great. I mean, that's perfect. Yeah. There's obviously nothing to compare it to. It's just everyone's testimony that pink blanket was kind of notorious for being there. So that's good. And it's going to, it's a great piece. You don't need proof positive in these hearings. You don't need to prove the case. All you need to do is convince the judge that the information you're giving them, the corroborating information, is something that a reasonable person would believe, that it's accurate or trustworthy for a reasonable person. It doesn't have to be proof positive. So that's all you need, to have this go forward.
Here's a question for you. So at this hearing, they weren't allowed to use the confession at all. And because you had to prove beyond the confession. So if the judge rules that there is enough information or whatever evidence to move forward with a criminal case, then do they allow the confession to be part of, the mix and the evidence?
Right. So what'll happen is if the judge allows it to go forward, which I think he will, I'd be surprised if he didn't. Then it just goes into the normal run-of-the-mill murder trial, for lack of better terms. So at that point, the confession will be brought in. Now, they will probably object to it. There'll be all kinds of objections going back and forth. But if he was, if he was Mirandized, if everything was proper, the confession will probably be admitted at that point.
Yeah. And then just to give you a little crib sheet on how it went down, Allison was able to get a private investigator through a cold case organization involved in it, Jeff Walters, who, and he went in and he was a retired state police officer. He actually went in and just with an interpreter, a court certified interpreter, just did a knock and talk on Bud's house, and Bud let him in and sat down. And so that was the first confession. And then he informed his, people that he knew that were handling the case, the state police. And it was actually a blizzard then too. And they actually, when they found out he confessed, they flew up in a helicopter in a blizzard to go pick him up and take him back. They Mirandized him. And then he did 2 other confessions, which were recorded. So you have those 2 confessions. So not 1, but 2, so that you can say, well, we didn't get it right the first time. It was misinterpreted because of, the intricacies of sign language. But so you have he's confessed 3 times to, a former law enforcement person who was a licensed private investigator, and then 2 times to state police after he was Mirandized when he was brought in. So I can't, if they try to figure how to bifurcate that confession to the, in the case, I can't understand how they would be able to do that.
I know, but they will.
Yeah.
Trust me, they will try.
Well, and
I think they feel like they have to,
Yeah.
There was also a court appointed or certified interpreter, and it was the same interpreter for all 3 confessions. So he actually confessed. And then the second time was also with Jeff. And Jeff said to Bud, can I record this for my note keeping? So that would have been before he was Mirandized. And then the third one, he was Mirandized, brought to the police department and confessed fully at the police department with,
and I'm sure
with
that
the same interpreter all 3 times.
Right. So, that's going to be really, unless I don't see that they have any shot at taking out any of the witnesses. I mean, there's not that much really there. I mean, you guys overheard some stuff. You have your background, but it's not really convoluted or anything like that. So I think the only thing that they can, I mean, I would think the only shot they may go after is the confession. And they're going to do that anyway. So the attorneys know how to, they'll take care of that. But that would be the only shot.
Just curious. So will they allow the fact, like past behavior? Like, for example, he was just in right before he confessed, he was in jail for violating a PFA for strangling his girlfriend. And that whole strangling behavior is a pattern. Do you think they would allow that?
They would definitely fight that. And I'm not sure that the judge is going to allow that. I'm not real familiar.
Just curious because it's
Pennsylvania law. Yeah, I'm not real familiar with Pennsylvania law, but a lot of places they don't allow past behavior unless it's connected to the current behavior, and they just don't because they think that it taints the jury.
But even something like that where she was choked, I mean, it's a violent attack on a woman. I mean, I would think that they should use that as precursory behavior in order to kind of forensically assess his mental state.
And they might. I just don't know. I'm not familiar, but I do know that usually does not get admitted into evidence because it doesn't. Well, this is going to sound weird, but in their minds, it hurts his case, but it's not connected to the case. There's nothing that happened in this case that is tied to anything else. That's a bad example of it, but most of the time,
example of his female relationships and how
exactly. But Allison, did he say in the his confession that that's how he killed her was by strangulation?
Yeah.
Okay, so he says that
maybe that'll connect it in.
Because let's say he used a particular knife and he actually described, I used the same knife that I threatened this person, I stabbed this person with 20 years ago, and another person I did the same thing 15 years ago, and then he recently he had a girlfriend who he choked as well, who's reasonable like that, and so it's almost like there's a pattern of behavior here. So, and the fact that he admitted in his 3 confessions that that's the way he took her life, I think that I don't know how you not be able to make that admit.
Did he confess to the others in the confession? Did they bring up the others, the previous ones?
Not in his confession, no.
Yeah,
it was only about my mother.
Right. So I think I think they might take a very narrow stance on that.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I'm just not familiar enough with Pennsylvania law to do that. But in my experience, even previous convictions aren't allowed in during the trial. Usually,
plenty of those.
Yeah. So they
but
just
in the trial, if you're allowed to hear the confession, what is I don't even understand what the question is. He said he did it. The details of how he said he did it align with the circumstantial evidence.
Right.
So I don't even know what the question is.
Exactly.
Well,
the jury,
but they will try. They will object to it. Trust me, they have to. They don't want to open up a chance for a mistrial, not a mistrial, but for an appeal that they weren't represented to the fullest extent. So they will try. That's the only thing I can see them really attacking. But don't worry about it. because your prosecutors are very much aware of that, and they're going to be ready for that. So I would not lose any sleep over it at all. I'm just telling you, don't be surprised if they do, because that's really the only thing they've got, I think.
And I think also the fact that because Bud is hearing impaired and all of the issues that the communication issues, I think a DA is looking at this case and said, listen, we have to make sure this thing is bulletproof, because so many people, if they get anything, if they wrongfully convict a deaf man based upon a 40+ year case, how could they do this innocent? Yeah, he didn't understand what was going on. He's like, he didn't know what he was saying, or the interpreter. So I think they're kind of shielding themselves and buttressing up their prosecution case, so there won't, like you said before, they won't be, number one, an appeal, but also like just a public relations nightmare. If we get convicted a elderly, hard, hearing impaired man who 40 years old can't even remember what he did 40 years ago. I can just see the headlines now, how they would spin it. Yeah. But the good thing is he doesn't have that much. He has, as far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Allison, what support does he have supporting him? Allison's got an army of people behind her.
Right.
And a movement, and there's no one coming out and saying, "Oh, I don't think he did it." His recent girlfriend, who's deathly afraid of him, who he said that he tried to ask her to marry him while he was in jail.
Sure, so she can't testify against him.
Exactly. Hear that, Jodi?
I know, it did not surprise me. It's like, okay, yeah.
I said it to Jodi.
That happened.
I know. I told that to Jodi the other day, and she goes, "Oh yeah, he wants to make sure she doesn't testify against him, but she's got some Easter eggs that she's hiding."
Unreal.
They try everything, even you were talking about the little things in court, like mispronouncing names and stuff like that. They do that all the time.
They do it to get a rise out of you too. That it really is to get people emotional so that they can be like, "Oh, look, you're crazy. Get out of here." It's all gaslighting. People do it all the time.
Right. And there's one thing I used to do that they used to get so angry at, is that if there was a jury or whoever the trier of fact was, if it was a jury, most of the time it was, or if it was the judge, when a defense attorney was playing those games with me, mispronouncing my name, or just whatever, because they have an arsenal of games they play. I used to, when they would ask me a question, I would always turn to whoever the trier of fact was to answer it. And they used to get so angry, and they couldn't say anything, but you could see them slowly working their way to whichever direction I kept looking, so they could get in there, because they want you to talk to them and not the people who are trying the case. So I used to always do that, and it used to make them mad. So
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and plus, I think especially the jury, the judge probably knew what was going on, all along. But the jury sometimes appreciates that, because it's almost like, especially if a defense attorney gets you going in an emotional way where you've kind of lost it, you're angry, you're going back and forth, they kind of, they become invisible almost. And I think the jury kind of appreciates it when you acknowledge the fact that they're the ones trying this, so just a little tip.
It's a good tip.
Yeah.
Really good tip. I never understood. I used to see that sometimes in court cases. I'm like, oh, why are they looking at the jury? And I'm going, oh, they're appealing to the jury. They're not appealing to the, and you're basically just cutting off the defense attorney or the prosecution, whoever's questioning you, that's trying to get you to say something you don't want to say or do something you don't want to do.
Yeah, well, in honesty, I probably didn't do that when the prosecutor was talking to me, but I did it a lot if the defense attorney was.
Yeah.
Just because, it's like, it just breaks that, that it breaks that kind of dominance where they've got you going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you make eye contact with the jury, it's more powerful. It's like you're transmitting. It's like when you look at somebody and they're telling you something very profound. Right. It's gonna hit different than if they're not looking at you.
Right. Right. So, that's just a little, but don't think it's just based or, coming at you. They do it all the time to all the witnesses or witnesses that they think it'll help them with. Yeah. It's probably a class they take. I'm not sure if it's a class they have in law school, but yeah.
I bet you it is. I've sat in a couple mock trials. A friend of mine who's a lawyer, and I was actually visiting them, and they included me into the mock trial as like a witness and stuff like that. And they were stopping stuff, and then the professor's like, well, "This is a technique you need to do," stuff like that. Like, for us, there's that old Mike Wallace technique when they would interview someone, and when they tell you, like, as soon as you get someone who's like very close to be on the verge of tears, is you don't say anything and you just stare at them and don't say anything, and then usually the tears get elicited. So it's just techniques. It's just human techniques to kind of elicit responses. So it's very.
Right. I mean, we learn them in interrogation too.
Oh, I'm sure.
You learn when to move in and when to move out, and and they usually work.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I think a lot of this is because Bud was, handicapped and deaf, and because they could not get someone to interpret quickly without it being a big cost. And if he was not deaf, I think this would have gone a completely different way. And I think because of when it was during the early 80s,
decades ago,
it just wasn't something that, like you said, Jodi, like they wouldn't even think about, oh, well, we have to bring an interpreter with us. Like that wasn't something on their radar.
Right. And then how do you do that?
But it should be. I mean, it should be. It should be across the board in every police department in the country. Like, you don't know what you're walking into. It could be a deaf person, a blind person, of someone who speaks, a different language, whatever. But I think that a lot of this is because of that. And he used that. I think Bud was very manipulative and was able to use that for his benefit in order to get sympathy and empathy from people. That I would never do something like this,
Yeah.
And
right.
What,
yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to me, but missing persons are always difficult because, of the runaway thing, but it just didn't fit the scenario in this particular case. There was it wasn't a young kid who was mad at their parents, that would just run off the deep end. It was a mother with children, and
what even more so is the fact that she had relatives that lived
across the street. So it's like that were, if there were, and they knew there were some issues going on with Bud. Mm-hmm. And, so it's not like she had a sanctuary. She had a place to go to be protected, and if she did go over there and she had to leave, she would have taken Allison and Aaron. She would have taken them both and scooped them up. If she felt threatened in any way, she would have. She wasn't a shrinking violet. She wasn't someone who was like very weak-minded. She was a very strong, confident person.
Right.
Despite her handicap. I mean, she just, she didn't let it stop her. And, so she would have definitely taken those kids and just walked across the street if she felt threatened. So it's not like,
not to mention a fire department across the street and a church next door.
Exactly. And the thing that always irritates me about these types of things, when they say the woman just ran off and left her kids, which is ridiculous, because I don't know any woman who would leave their children. No. And it's also the fact that no one came forward and said, oh yeah, I know Lonnie was having an affair with this guy. Who'd she leave with? There was never a discussion about who's the guy. Did anyone know about this? Did she ever tell anybody about this? Did anyone ever see them together? Who's the phantom person?
Who's the guy? What kind of car are they in? What's he driving?
Why aren't you looking
at the one person that she was like good friends with, that they worked together? She went missing, and he was married with kids. He never went anywhere. Like, he was still there. So they didn't run away together. He's still there.
Right.
If the person was.
If there was even a person. Right. I mean, I think her best friend would have known. Her friends that were her best friends, I think they would have known what was really going on. Her sister would have known. Someone would have known that she had someone that she was planning to leave and that she was going to go.
Right.
The way Lonnie's personality was, just from seeing those home movies and just from listening to Allison and all her family members, I don't believe at all for a second that she would have left, even if she had someone.
Well, and even if she had a plan to go, she would have had a plan to take her children away, like get them to a family member or a best friend or the babysitter even.
Yeah, she was not leaving him with Bud.
Right.
No.
Alone.
No.
Yeah.
And then what they had to
endure.
No
one believed that either. No one believed, oh, this is what happened.
No. That's what's so frustrating, Jodi. It's like for 40 years, everybody that knew Lonnie knew that there's no way that this could have possibly have happened. And yet here, this is the story they're being told. So it's very frustrating. And not to say there weren't investigators who were still looking into the case, because there were, but I just think that, as time goes by, how it goes. It's like time goes by, they don't have the resources and things, whatever.
And plenty of other cases to replace it.
A lot of cases. But I just think that the fact that there wasn't one person who came forward, like Rob said, and supported Bud or said, yes, she could have run off with so-and-so. That to me is where the law needs to change. That to me is where the missing person law needs to change. And you can't have this like 48-hour thing or whatever this is. You need to look for people, because if everyone is telling you that this is not their behavior and something's wrong, you need to listen. We can't just be like, oh, well, they just ran up. No, I mean, I don't believe that. I mean, it's different now in the digital age. It's so easy now. Where everybody is all the time, right? There's a totally different world we're living in.
Still happens.
But it still happens. People still go missing. I just think that there's room to change this system for the missing person.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Jodi, because you got to see Lonnie's sister, Glennie, on the podcast. And
I heard her.
You heard her. Oh yeah, you listened to it, but you should. She's interesting. I love Glennie. I think
Glennie.
And she's just. And you have technically a character witness for both Lonnie and Bud, who was right in the middle of it, and she knew. And she was a teenager at the time, but still, she was an older teenager. So she knew what was going on, and so based upon what you heard in her podcast and what she told you, what she told in court, how do you think that weighed?
I mean, personally, I think that weighed very heavily. You could tell that she was very close to her sister. And you could also tell that there was an inner struggle going on, because she did at one time care for him and thought of him, in her words, as a brother. So that, in my opinion, that would weigh very heavily with the judge. I got a kick out of her a couple of times, and she came out of her shell. It took her a bit, but she came out of her shell, and she was a good she was a very good witness. Just from what I heard, she was a very good witness.
Yeah. And as from your standpoint, been involved in these cases, I mean, how much did that, I know a lot of times they go by, the checklist of things that they have to do for the law, but you can't replace something like that kind of emotion and that kind of viewpoint, for someone who was boots on the ground, who knew both of these people, experienced it, was there when it happened. Right. All of that, even though they didn't have all the answers, they just instinctively and based upon what they knew what happened.
Right. No. And from what I understand, I don't know, Allison, were there any witnesses on his side? Did anybody see you have all of the corroborating information that backs up the fact that she's gone and that it was a result of a crime, and you have nothing that says differently. I mean, it's lopsided.
He confessed, and he never denied anything. Like, I mean, the last hearing, you just couldn't talk about the confession, but there was no one that his side presented, because that wasn't in question. He confessed.
Yeah, but even that, if there was somebody that could muddy the waters with something, I think they would have had them there.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I don't think there is anybody, Because I was wondering about that too, because I was like, if he did have someone, believe me, they would have put him on the stand. They would have used anything they could to support the possibility that his confession.
Knowledge, there isn't anyone.
There isn't anybody, which I think is interesting as well, which is also another testament to Lonnie. I mean, it's like everybody's here because they know that Lonnie was murdered. It's like
when we walked into the courtroom, I remember the officer, like I was first to walk in, and he's like, this side is for the defense and this side is for the prosecution. I said, there's not going to be anyone here for the defense. just saying.
Just saying.
And it would the courtroom was full of no one for him.
Yeah. So see, that's another thing. There's absolutely nothing defending his position at all.
Right.
And the only reason everybody was there is because he confessed 3 times. So it's not like someone finger pointed him and said, "Oh yeah, he did it. I remember. He told me." But no, he was there because he confessed. So it's kind of like, that's why. I mean, I know we have to go through this process, but let's just put it this way. I would be utterly shocked at, because it's coming up at the 31st. It's in a couple weeks. And if this judge comes up and finds some sort of loophole to kind of drag this thing out again.
Well, there won't be any dragging out. This is like an evidentiary. This is, it's either going to go forward or it's
not.
done.
He's going to walk free.
Right. And I just don't see that happening. I mean, I have to admit that with today's, I don't know anymore what's going to happen in a court of law today.
True.
But I just would be very, very surprised if there was anything but it's going to go forward.
Yeah.
In this one, because
and then do you think at that point, there'll be he'll probably go for a plea deal as opposed to a trial?
Probably. I mean, I would imagine. I don't know what he's being, is he being charged with, like murder, homicide?
Yeah.
1?
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's 2.
2. So like they're going for a heat of passion type thing.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, they'll go for a plea, probably.
Yeah, but at his age, it's a death sentence. So, because I don't know what the I don't know what the proper term is, the sentencing guidelines are for something like that, but I can't imagine it's.
Well, that was another weird thing, because before the writ of habeas corpus came about, we were talking plea deal, and the DA told me that they had to come up with a sentence that was reflective of 1981 crime standards, because that's when it happened. And he said that they couldn't offer more than 10 to 20 because it was homicide 2. So had it been decades ago when it should have been, I would have fought that, but he's 77. So, I mean,
well, I think that's kind of it, because it basically, if he got the max, it's basically a life sentence. Right. Where if he would have been convicted back then, it would have been 45 years plus to life.
Oh, I see. That. Thank you for that, because that makes. I literally was talking to my aunt the other day, and I said, it really upsets me that his sentence will be a quarter of the time he lied about it. He lied for 45 years and made up stories, and he's going to get a quarter of that time to serve.
That's why.
I thank you for that. Makes me feel differently about that. I appreciate that.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Because
that bothered
me. A life sentence.
Okay.
You just got to be free at the front end instead of the back end of it, know?
Yeah. So I have one other question for you. What is your take on the things that he, and I don't even know if this will be admissible in court or whatever, but he would say and do a lot of very questionable things. For example, he would put my brother and I in the car and tell us, It was our job to search for her. We were going to go on a drive. He was driving, and we were to look for her. And an hour or more, like we'd just be driving around bored. And, I just remember being so annoyed. But he would say, like, we're going to go looking for her. That kind of stuff, knowing that all the while he did it. He also, I never questioned him because I knew that there would be a lot of anger and abuse that would follow that if I ever brought her name up. So I didn't, but he would front load things to us that we knew we weren't allowed to respond to. So we would just listen. And he would say things like, it's hard to find, can't prove. And the fractions verbiage is because of being hearing impaired, but he over and over would say, hard to find, can't prove. And I never would question, but now I'm like, well, yeah, now I get it.
Right.
I mean, he would say that to the police, and he said it to us many times, and it didn't really make sense until I found out what happened. And I think, well, he knew all along that she'd be hurt. Like, could those types of things benefit the case, or is that something they wouldn't even look into?
No, I think that the prosecutor would want that in front of the jury.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And that's not,
pardon?
Can't find, too hard to prove. Why would you say that?
Right. And but even the psychological torture that is for you as a child, looking for your mother that he knows is gone, that will play heavily with a jury or a judge if they're listening.
I remember too, like he had this newspaper article that he kept that was a Florida beach, and he's like, that's where she is. And Aaron and I would never say anything because we knew that that would be trouble.
Right.
But he would like make up things to portray that, see, she left you, she's on this beach, and all the while he did it.
Yeah.
Like, it's so incredibly crazy.
Yeah. They'll want that. I would think they would want that in testimony. And, the defense is going to object like crazy to it, but that's different from bringing in past behavior to other people. That's a totally different thing. This happened to you and your brother.
Right.
And that's your recollection of it. So that's stuff that would play very
about this topic, not something else. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So that just shows his psychopathy. It's just he's to do it is one thing, but to kind of torture you guys with it. It's like a game to him.
It is a game.
Absolutely.
It's pretty sick.
Yeah. Hey, Jodi, so as far as, let's just say everything moves forward and, what's the difference between what you think he would receive? And I don't know if you know the totality of this, but just kind of ballpark, a plea deal versus if they decide to go to trial. I don't know one defense attorney with all this up against them, and it's a public defender. It's going to cost this, the county money to do this. What do you think, as opposed to, plea deal versus what he would get versus if he went to trial and was convicted?
If he was convicted, it's still going to be, I don't think it's going to be much different. I really don't. I don't think that they would plea this down much. I don't even know what they would plea it down to, actually. But they'll come up with something. But the time that he would get, I don't see there being a whole lot of difference. I don't think they're going to, in other words, they're not going to plea him down to something that's going to be probation or, I don't think there'd be anything less than 10, 20 years, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. No less than
I don't think there would be any time served in this.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my guess. It's, who knows? But
I know.
I think it would be pretty close. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, a big difference. I don't know. But it will be, it's an expense to the county, and I'm sure they'll want to plea it if they can. But I don't, and I think you're going to have, Allison, I think you would have input into that. You know, if they were going to plea this, I think that you would have some input into that.
Really? I didn't know that.
Well,
I didn't feel like I did have any, but
you didn't.
It was more like they told me this is what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Well, maybe not.
I mean, I didn't argue it, but I don't recall them saying, "How do you feel about this?" It was more like, "This is what we're doing."
Well, and they may put it to you like that, and hopefully they would explain their rationale for it.
And they did. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't argue it. I mean, they did explain, like, I know this feels like 10 to 20 is a slap in the face, but considering his age, it is a life sentence. Like, I understood that. So.
Right. So, you know, I don't know the answer to that, Rob. I would hate for them to plead this down to something that really is a slap in the face.
Well, I feel like the public would be in an uproar because this is a very big case in that area.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of interest, and I think people would voice their opinion.
Oh, including you.
Yes.
You think?
For sure.
I feel, listen, let's just put it this way. I feel bad for that judge if he decides
it's not going to be pretty.
Exactly. I just do. I just feel bad for that judge. I mean, I hope he has, you know.
No, I think
he's going to get an earful and an eyeful,
as he should.
You know, because it's just.
Well, and even the fact that he confessed, where you would give somebody props for that, right? You're cooperating. He confessed, but he took 45 years to do
it. Exactly.
So
he didn't voluntarily do it. Had no one knocked at, if Jeff Walters didn't knock on his door and just showed up unannounced, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this.
And I can't tell you how many years I spent begging them to talk to him. Why won't you interview him? Well, we're only going to get one shot. Jeff was there multiple times. Like, it burns me that this could have been solved decades ago had they just actually talked to him.
So they never really sat him down and interviewed. Well, they did the one time and it didn't go well.
Right. So that was way back. Over the years, like I don't think that they even asked him for years because they said he lawyered up. But I don't think he ever really did. I think he just threatened that. I think he said, I'm going to get a lawyer. I don't want to talk anymore. But didn't actually get a lawyer, didn't actually do any of that. And they backed off way back then.
But just so you know, all he has to do is say, I want a lawyer.
That's it.
And it's over. The conversation is over.
Which shouldn't be that way. He committed a crime.
I know, but it is.
Yeah.
It's,
and I don't want to say they never did. So a year, 2 years ago, because it's almost a year since he confessed, but 2 years ago, they went and interviewed him, were there for several hours, were so happy that things went so well, and then never went back. I was like, why? He doesn't need more friends. He doesn't have any, so I guess that's not right. But they said, we have to make sure that we have enough, evidence. I can't go back. And then it was, we have to have money for an interpreter. We can't find the right one. We had to go to the FBI to ask them for a certified interpreter. It was excuse after excuse.
That's
and
crazy.
So my point is even when the times that they did interview him, they didn't really press him,
right?
Because they didn't want to scare him off. How are you going to get anywhere if you don't?
I mean, seriously, at some point, the worst thing that can happen is he clams up, he shuts up.
Right.
You're in the same place. It's you do, okay, so now you got to make the case without him. But do you know why he confessed?
So my opinion is a couple things. One, religion. He's 77 and I guess he has found religion and Jeff asked him, like, where do you think you're going to go from here? You know, it's end of your life. You know, have you thought about that? And he said, yeah, well, I've forgiven, you know, I'm going to heaven. And Jeff said, well, God loves you and he forgives you, but God doesn't own your soul. The devil owns your soul because you haven't confessed. Like, there's only so much that can be done because God doesn't own your soul. Until you come clean and confess, you don't have a pathway to heaven. And that got to him.
He bought it. Okay.
That and the fact that he was in a motel only because he had nowhere to go. He was in jail for assaulting his girlfriend and then violating the PFA. And then they couldn't find anywhere for him to go. No one would take him. No one would let him come in. He had no friends. They called nursing homes. They called, you know, retirement homes. No one would take him because he had a record and a current felony. And so then the jail gave him a 2-week voucher. The county gave him a 2-week voucher to stay at a motel and said, then you're on your own. He had exhausted that 2 weeks and the motel was like, hey, bud, get out. So, and that's when Jeff came. So he was at this vulnerable time where he also had no money because he was in jail for 6 months. So his disability was stopped. He'd have to reapply for it because he was in jail. He had no car. The car was repoed. He had no phone, no source of income, no money in the bank. So I don't know how he was even living other than the free breakfast at the motel. You know, I don't know how he was doing that. I mean, maybe a social worker was helping him with free food or something, but he was at the bottom and no one was helping him. Well,
that's good, I guess.
And I got to all the deaf people, so they knew his real story. I went and spoke at the deaf clubs and, you know, started different chat threads. And I'm like, don't let him fool you. Yeah. This is the truth.
Yeah. Good for you.
Nobody would help him.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I couldn't believe it. I was scratching my head thinking, never was that easy for me to get a confession. You know, what the heck?
Well,
I really didn't ever think that day would happen. I didn't.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, after 40 plus years, it was easy, but it was 40 years. I mean, it's like, I think at any point at that time,
he 45. He seemed to be unchallenged, though, pretty much most of that time. Yeah. He just went about a life, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
In the same
Free
area.
As a bird. Yep.
Okay.
Free as a bird.
Amazing.
Crazy.
Made a lot of enemies along the way. Like, he wasn't a friendly chap, you know, but nobody pushed him. Nobody, you know, he just lived his life.
Well, I'm sure they'll give him credit for time served, but that won't be, you know.
Not much. How long has he been in there? For like a year?
No, he confessed in November. So, well, yeah, almost a year. It'll be a year in November.
So a year. Yeah. They'll give him credit for that. But yeah.
Well, all we can do is hope and pray that the judge is a rational person with the law and takes all that information into consideration. And like I said, I mean, Jodi thinks it's, you know, positive in your direction. So I remember you had people coming up to you after the court case and they said that they were hopeful and it looked like it was pretty good. I mean, Jeff Walters, you said, came up to you and said that was pretty good.
All of the DA, the investigator, they all said they feel like they have a good shot.
Yeah.
And they said
I think you do too.
Yeah. Glad to hear that.
Yes.
You know, you never know until you hear the words.
Exactly.
But I mean,
I know. Isn't it funny how it is? It's like, you know, you can sit there and it's like, yes, you've been saying, you know, the sky is blue. Then judge comes and goes, well, it's not really that blue, you know, and it happens though, you know, it's like, and you're like, what?
Right. Well, that's like the whole habeas thing. I mean, we were talking a plea deal and then the next thing I know, they canceled everything and said, well, now we have this hearing. Right. And I get it. You know, they said it's for the reason of appeal. It's good that we're doing this. But at the time, it was such a sucker punch. Like, what? Yeah. He confessed. What? I don't even understand why that's necessary.
I know.
Okay. They can't in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the states where they can't convict based on a confession alone. And But the question, there's only one question: would a reasonable, after hearing everything that was said at the hearing, would a reasonable person think that your mom was deceased and that her death was caused by a crime? That's all I have to, that's all has to come out of that. So I think you got a really good shot. I'll be praying for it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks,
Thanks,
you both.
Jodi and Allison. It's lovely to see you both.
Yep.
Thank you.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Midi knows that just when you thought you had your body all figured out, bam, perimenopause. Suddenly, your hormones are raging like it's puberty round 2. You're waking up at 3 a.m. and dealing with mood swings that have mood swings. Your ears are itchy, your jeans don't fit, you need an industrial-sized fan to cool down, and you've suddenly forgotten the word for microwave. Most women in perimenopause don't know that they are, even though it can last for 10 years. They also don't realize that most of their symptoms are treatable. That's why we built Midi Health. Midi is a company built by women who've been through it. Our menopause experts actually listen and treat the real symptoms you're feeling. Your symptoms aren't just common, they're treatable. Schedule a visit with a menopause specialist at Midi. Visit joinmidi.com. Specialist-led care, virtual visits, insurance eligible. Midlife needs Midi. Results may vary. Medications prescribed only if clinically appropriate based on a consultation with a clinician. Insurance coverage varies. Check with your plan for coverage.